I'm now going to call on our next speaker, who is Una Dhubhghaill, who's Chief Executive, of course, of the Charities Regulatory Authority. And as you all know, the authority was established finally last year under the 2009 Charities Act. And before her appointment as Chief Executive, Una was head of the Charities Regulation Unit in the Department of Justice. And to talk about deepening regulation, will you please give Una a big welcome. Thank you.
I wasn't expecting that. I thought I was going last. So anyway, I don't work in the charity sector, and I've never worked in the charity sector. And that's something that I'm always very conscious of when I come to talk to a group such as yourselves. But when Deirdre Garvey was describing some of what happened towards the end of 2013 in the sector, I felt it resonated with me as somebody who works in the public sector. So she mentioned that it was all of a sudden being cast as the bad guy and have it being subjected to hyper scrutiny by a public and a media that don't necessarily understand the complexity of what you do and the value you deliver and how difficult it is to deliver that under the circumstances that you need to in order to meet the day-to-day need. So I thought, well, okay, I may never have worked in this sector, but I know a little bit of what that feels like. So one of the things that I think that the crisis has clearly created, A, a massive need to respond, and B, a massive energy for that response. And what I want to talk to you about today is how the state piece fits into that overall jigsaw, the piece that we're working on to help restore the confidence in the sector. I was at the dinner last night, and the President spoke inspirationally, I thought, about citizenship and about the value that this particular sector delivers. And even today, I haven't been here all morning, but I've heard a bit about, talking about values and talking about high ideals and the trust and the generosity of the sector. And I'm not going to talk about that. I've been asked to talk about advancing regulation, and to a degree, it's a little bit about the donkey work. And I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves about aspiring to those high ideals, aspiring to that trust and confidence that the sector needs and has very strongly articulated that it wants to regain, I think we also need to be honest with ourselves about the donkey work. So I'm going to go to that level of what's required. Sometimes it means filling out the forms. It means focusing on books of account. It means that kind of some of the boring stuff that is required in order to underpin the trust and confidence of a vibrant and well-managed and well-functioning charity sector. So I just want to talk a little bit about the framework, about the changes for charities and the changes for donors and beneficiaries and the general public that our reforms are introducing, and then very, very, very briefly about where we're going next with this. And I'm conscious, I have a short period of time, so I'm going to take you through this fairly quickly. In terms of advancing regulation, the authority was set up last October, and overnight registered 8,500 charities. So in terms of the advancement of regulation, any charity that was already registered with revenue overnight took on a different legal status under the 2009 Charities Act. So in and of itself, we took a fairly sudden and fairly large step into a new regulatory framework. Now, the outworking of all of what that's going to mean and the value it's going to add is going to take a little more time. But, that was a very significant milestone. The annual reporting piece is going to kick in later this year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And we have also published the Register of Charities with the publication of information on charities, starting small, but going on to evolve into a full register that gives comprehensive information on the charity sector. We're also introducing compliance monitoring. That's not something we've begun yet, but we will be. And then the protection of charities is at the moment, our work there is focused on the delivery of services under the old Charities Act, consents for sales and so on. But that's an area of our work that we will be growing in the months and years ahead. So essentially, the changes for charities, I mean, most of you in this room will have had your charity automatically registered overnight. And I'm conscious that that can be, that's a little bit of an uncomfortable thing in many ways. It's been fantastically useful for us in terms of, establishing a register of charities from scratch and doing it overnight. But, it's something that I'm conscious it has put all of you into a relationship with this agency, and that's happened quickly, and it will take time for everybody's comfort levels with that to grow. Registration of charities is mandatory and it's comprehensive. So essentially what that means is your charity is either registered already or else it needs to be registered. And, that's a message I want to kind of say very clearly and give it a minute to sink in. You're either on the Register of Charities and you need to engage with the CRA in that capacity, or else you're not, and you need to get yourself on the Register of Charities. So, that's a clear and significant change that has occurred within the sector. So for those of you already registered, we've asked you to provide information to us, and we've written out to all 8,500 charities asking them to provide additional information for the register. We're getting a pretty good response. I can tell you that about a little bit under 3,500 of the registered charities have actually engaged with this process. Now, of those that haven't, there's a bunch of them who are in the education sector who we've asked to hold back. We've parked the registration of schools for now because we have some dialogue with the Department of Education about how to manage that efficiently. But so that probably accounts for some of those who haven't responded to us. But there's still a sizable cohort of charities out there who are registered and who haven't yet engaged with us. So again, that's a clear message I want to send out today, that for a charity that is already registered, there are requirements. We have asked for information, and we want to see that figure of 3,500, just under. We want to see that, and we expect to see it rise in the weeks and months ahead. You have all been given a new registered charity number. And, this is, I suppose, one of the little concrete things about the new registered status of charities. And I would encourage all registered charities to start using that number. It's likely that there will be regulations made about precisely how that number needs to be used and where it needs to be printed and so on. But that hasn't been done yet. So in the interim, a good rule of thumb is to start using this number in the way that you used to use your CHY number, and will continue to use your CHY number, well, that'll be up to yourselves. But, it's not a question of shredding all the old flyers, but when you're getting new flyers printed, start using your registered charity number. This is the number that identifies your organisation on the Register of Charities to the public and confirms its status as a registered charity. And that will, as I mentioned, the distinction between a registered and unregistered charity will become more important as time goes on. So it's a good idea at this stage to get into the habit of using that number. The annual reporting to the CRA, every charity will be required to send us a report 10 months after the end of the financial year. So, that's going to start to kick in later this year. And we're going to be asking... We're working on regulations around the content of those reports. We hope to publish draft regulations later on this year, but they won't be in place for the first round of reporting. So what we'll be looking for is just a very simple report, whatever reporting it is that you're already preparing, and where there may be charities who don't prepare any sort of report, we will be providing a very simple template. But it's going to be really whatever annual report you already produce, we'll be looking for you to send us that. Whatever accounts you already produce, we'll be looking for you to send us those until we have set our own standards. Now, we want to notify all charities of these reporting requirements. It's very important that we can do that. They're clearly there in the legislation, but we can't expect people necessarily to be aware of the timing. But we can only notify you when you've already come into our system, created your online account, and started adding your information, because that's how we know where you are. That's how we have the contact information that will enable us to send out the notifications. So again, my message is, if you're registered, come into us, come into the register, start filling out your information and get into our contact database, because that's how we will be able to advise you of very important regulatory requirements that will be coming down the tracks. In terms of the general public, again, I'm going to bang on about the register because that is the key piece of new regulatory infrastructure. If you have an interest in charities, if you want to know if a charity is registered or not, go to the register and have a look. Registration is mandatory. So if a charity isn't registered, the question is why not? Registration is comprehensive. There will be no such thing as a charity that doesn't need to register. And the reason it's been put in like that is to give people an authoritative single source of information as to whether an organisation is a registered charity or not. And what that means then is that any organisation on that register is a charity within the meaning of the 2009 Act. It comes within that regulatory framework, and that's what, that's what the register tells the member of the public who consults it and finds the name of the charity there. And we have some public information available, being provided by yourselves, and my, grateful thanks to those of you. I think of the 3,500 charities who've started this process, we've got maybe in or around between 150 and 200. I'm looking at my IT manager over there to get a nod or a shake of the head. Between 150 and 200 who, according to themselves, have supplied us with all the information we've asked for. So again, that's great to those who have, but we want to see that number growing. Now, I'm conscious there may be very good reasons why people haven't yet completed this. They may have queries. We're getting a lot of queries. We're obviously creating work for the wheel as well with queries. We have a stand in the expo section, so if you have specific questions, please do go along and visit our stand. So, we're conscious it'll take time for people to complete this process, but we encourage you to stick at it and to keep going. Very quickly, continued development of the Register of Charities we'll be working on. And we will also, in the coming months, be registering, doing our own registrations of new charities for the first time. And that's something, which will be a major milestone for ourselves, because in future, any new organisation wanting to operate as a charity will need to register with us. Introducing the reporting requirements, I've already touched on that, and developing our own compliance programme. At the moment, our compliance is really focused on have they got the letter from us? Have they done anything about it? Have they started supplying their information? If so, good. If not, we will be getting into a process of reminders and chase cycles and so on. And development of advisory programme. These are all the things that the spaces that we hope to get into and intend to get into over the coming months. Finally, that's really the message I have. Consult the register. I can't say check the register because somebody else already says that. Consult the register. And I say that to registered charities, go on there, look at your own entry. If it's blank, if it's not what you want it to be, provide the information that you do want to see there about your charity. And if you're an unregistered charity, come into us, make us aware of your existence, and start the process of going on the register. And if you're a member of the public, if you're a funder, if you're a donor, have a look, see if the charity is registered. Once we get past, we've extended the registration deadline out to April of next year, but once we get a reasonable distance past that deadline, it will be the case that any organisation not on that register is not entitled to operate as a charity. We've plenty of time, we've extended the deadline for very practical and I think sensible reasons, but we will get to that point where the register is the single authoritative list of who's in the sector and who isn't. So I encourage all of you to engage with that process, because as I said at the beginning, I think it's having this is one of the most important things that underpins the drive towards restoring trust and confidence. Having completed this process is an indicator, I think an indicator to us on the state side, out to the general public, that this is a charity where governance and accountability and meeting the requirements of accountability and professionalism are taken seriously, and that space is made for that within that charity. I think that's an important message, because it is only, my belief, it is only where the charity is well run, well managed, and does prioritise these areas that it can truly maximise the public benefit and the benefit out to those it helps that it was set up for in the first place. Thank you.